Under the burning sun of the Arizona desert, Dr. Evan Cole wiped the sweat from his face as he stepped into the narrow crack in the rock that the earthquake had opened only hours ago. The air inside was cool but thick with a strange metallic smell that made his heart beat faster, and every step he took seemed to echo back at him as if the cave itself was listening. He moved his flashlight along the walls and saw lines of glowing symbols carved deep into the stone symbols that shifted when he looked at them too long, twisting and curling like living things, and in the center of the chamber, standing on a stone pedestal, was the object that made his breath catch. It was a mask made of black crystal, its surface smooth and shining, as if polished for centuries with thin golden veins running across it like rivers of light. It looked both alien and ancient, something no human hands could have made, and when he reached out to touch it, the crystal was warm, almost like skin his team. Behind him joked from the entrance about kissing it for good luck, but their voices sounded far away. Evan found himself alone with the mask, the others busy taking photos of the walls, and before he could think about why he was doing it, he leaned forward and pressed his lips against the cold surface. Instantly, the cave seemed to shift around him. His knees went weak, and a deep voice like a whisper and a thunderclap at the same time spoke inside his mind. "I have waited for your breath." The words were not in English yet. He understood them perfectly. The warmth of the mask turned into a pulse that traveled through his body and made his vision blur. He stumbled backward, gasping, his flashlight slipping from his hand as blood trickled. From his nose, when he looked up, the mask had not moved yet. It felt like it was watching him. The air in the chamber was heavier now, pressing on his chest, as if the walls were leaning closer. The light from the symbols seemed brighter, sharper almost. Alive. He tried to call out to the team, but his voice came out dry and cracked. And when he stepped outside the cave, the desert didn't look the same. The colors were off the sky, seemed too deep, too dark for this hour. The sun itself felt dimmer, and somewhere far away, a low humming sound rolled across the sand, like a warning. He turned to tell the others, but they were staring at him with wide, uneasy eyes, as if they saw something behind him. He spun around, but the cave mouth was now just a wall of rock, solid and unbroken. The entrance gone as if it had never been there. Evan's heart pounded and his hands shook. He knew what he had felt, what he had heard inside his head, and though it made no sense, the voice from the mask still lingered like a shadow in his thoughts, repeating the same words again and again. "I have waited for your breath, and now you will listen." That night, Evan lay inside his small desert tent, unable to close his eyes because every time he blinked, he saw the black crystal mask floating in the darkness. And every time he thought about something ordinary like home or his research, the same deep voice returned, whispering in a language he did not know but could still understand perfectly the words, curled inside his mind like smoke, telling him fragments of sentences that made no sense. The ground will open, the sky will bleed, the heart will stop before it beats. And as the wind outside rattled the tent walls, Evan felt the temperature drop. Sharply, his breath misting in the air, even though it was still August in Arizona, he sat up quickly, gripping the flashlight. But the beam only cut into a thick fog that should not exist in the desert. He could hear footsteps crunching in the sand. Just beyond the fabric of the tent, slow, steady, measured, and then silence. He swallowed hard, unzipped the flap, and stepped outside. The campfire was still burning low, but two of his colleagues were gone, their sleeping bags empty, their boots and gear untouched. The others were huddled together, asking each other where they had gone. Nobody had seen them leave, and the desert floor around the tents was smooth without a single footprint. Evan's stomach twisted and his mind flashed back to the cave, to the mask, to the strange warmth, and the first whisper of that alien voice. Something told him this was connected. He didn't know how, but he could feel it in his bones. They searched for hours, calling the missing men's names until Dawn painted the horizon, and that was when Evan saw it inside his own tent. Sitting neatly in the middle of his bedroll was the black crystal mask. He knew for a fact they had locked it inside a reinforced crate hours away from camp. Yet here it was glowing faintly, the golden veins brighter than before. He took a step back, but the mask spoke again, and this time its voice was cold and sharp. The world will burn from the inside out. Evan staggered backward, his skin crawling, his mind telling him to run, but his body frozen. The mask did not move yet. He could feel its gaze pressing into him like invisible hands searching through his thoughts, pulling at memories and fears and hidden truths. It told him things no one should know, secrets. From his childhood mistakes, he had never confessed the exact moment his mother had died and how it had watched him even then, as if it had been waiting for this moment. His legs finally obeyed, and he rushed out of the tent telling the others what he had found. But when they went inside, the mask was gone. They stared at him with confusion and suspicion, and one man even asked if he was playing some kind of sick joke. Evan didn't argue. He just walked to the edge of camp, staring out into the endless desert, trying to hear anything besides the whisper in his head, but the voice only grew louder and more certain. It began describing things that had not yet happened. A car crash in Phoenix at noon tomorrow. A fire in a coastal city where the waves would glow red. A building collapsing under a bright blue sky. Evan clenched his fists, trying to push the voice out, but a part of him couldn't help wondering if it was telling the truth. If these events would happen, and if so, what would happen if he told someone in the distance? The low humming sound returned the same one he had heard outside the cave. It rose and fell in a rhythm like a giant heartbeat, and though the others seemed not to notice, Evan felt it vibrate through his bones as if the desert itself was alive. He knew one thing with absolute certainty. Now the mask was not just an object. It was something that could move without being seen, speak, without making a sound, and reach into a man's mind and plant seeds that would grow whether he wanted them to or not. And as the sun rose over the horizon, washing the desert in gold, Evan realized with a cold, sinking dread that the whispers were not stopping. They were only getting clearer. Evan sat hunched over a weathered notebook in the corner of an old desert diner. His coffee untouched his eyes. Bloodshot from a night without sleep, the whispers had not stopped. Not for a second. They wound through his mind like vines curling around every thought. And now they were showing him things, flashes of places and times that could not be real. At first it was only colors and shapes, bright alien skies, huge moons hanging low over mountains, made of glass rivers of molten light flowing through streets. Then the visions sharpened into something more solid. He saw vast cities that stretched for miles, their towers black and gold. Like the mask creatures with wings of bone and eyes like burning suns walked among smaller human figures, who carried offerings of food, water, and metal in their hands. He understood somehow that this was Earth, but not the Earth. He knew it was an Earth. From so far in the past it felt impossible, yet the voice in his head spoke clearly. These were the first cities built before human history began, before your kind remembered their own names. The vision shifted. The skies turned red. Fires burned across the towers. Humans ran screaming while the winged creatures fought something huge and unseen. The sound of the battle was like mountains breaking apart, and when it ended, the cities were gone, erased as if they had never been. Evan jerked back in his seat, knocking over the coffee cup, his breath shaking. The waitress looked at him strangely, but he barely noticed because the mask was there sitting on the seat across from him. It hadn't been there when he came in yet. Now it gleamed faintly, its golden veins pulsing with light. The mask's voice was no longer just in his head. He could hear it in the air around him, as if the whole diner had been swallowed by its sound. Humans were not the first, and you will not be the last. We left this world in fire. We will take it back in shadow. Evan stared at it, his hands gripping the edge. Of the table, he demanded to know why it had chosen him, why it kept showing him these visions. The mask replied with something that chilled his blood. "I am the messenger. You are the mouth. The world will hear, and it will obey." The mask told him there had always been one chosen human, someone who carried its words to the powerful ones of each age. Sometimes the words had brought peace, but more often they brought ruin every time the messenger spoke. The world changed. The last chosen one had lived. In the final days before the ice came, and his whispers had frozen the seas. Evan shook his head, saying he would never carry such messages, but the mask seemed almost amused. "You already have each time you dream, each time you wake and speak the dream. Aloud you carry me further." He thought of the predictions it had given: the car crash, the fire, the collapse, and a wave of cold passed over him. Had he told anyone about them? Yes, in fragments to the team, to the police officer who questioned them. After the men vanished, the mask pulsed brighter proof that its reach was growing, and then it gave him the next command: "You will speak to the leaders of your kind. They must prepare for the return." Evan's first instinct was to refuse, but at that moment, the diner's television flickered to life without sound, showing breaking news from 3 cities, a crash in Phoenix, a fire by the coast, glowing red waves, a building collapse under a clear blue sky, all exactly as the mask had said. His stomach dropped, his breath turned shallow, and the mask whispered one more thing before fading from sight. The second whisper will break the sky. And though Evan wanted to believe he could still walk away, some deep part of him knew the truth he had already started down a path that had no return. Evan tried to hide from it. He left the desert, took a bus east, kept his head down, and avoided every mirror, every reflection that might suddenly show the black crystal mask staring back at him, but it didn't matter whether he was in a crowded train station or a dark motel room. The voice was always there. The same deep whisper, like distant thunder curling through his mind, repeating fragments of sentences that made no sense until the moment they came. True days passed in a blur until one morning he woke to find the mask resting on the pillow beside him, its golden veins glowing brighter than he had ever seen. The hum in the air was louder now, a steady pulse that seemed to come from the earth. "Itself, you will speak the next whisper today," the mask told him. And though he shook his head and said nothing, the whisper was already pushing into his thoughts, planting a sentence there, like a seed. "You cannot hold it. You must release it." Evan left the motel without checking out, boarded a bus headed north, but halfway through the journey, his phone began vibrating nonstop with messages from friends and strangers, all asking the same thing. "What did you mean by it?" He didn't understand until one man in the seat across from him turned his phone toward him and showed a video. It was Evan sitting at a desk speaking directly into a camera, but it wasn't any recording he had made. His lips moved to form strange words, and every person watching somehow understood them perfectly. Within minutes, the news began reporting a massive solar flare striking the planet's satellites going dark, GPS failing, planes grounded, worldwide panic rising in cities. Evan's heart pounded. He hadn't spoken those words, had he? But the mask's voice cut through his panic. "Yes, you did. The whisper was heard by millions in the moment between your heartbeats. You cannot remember because the message does not belong to you, it belongs to me." Evan stumbled off the bus in a nameless small town. But the people there recognized him anyway. Some pointed, some shouted, some backed away. In fear, he tried to run. But every street seemed to curve back toward the same place, a narrow alley where the mask was waiting on. The wet pavement, its glow reflecting in the puddles. "You will speak again, and the sky will break." The voice told him this time aloud, not just in his head. He felt the words sink into him, as if they were being carved into his bones. He didn't know if the mask meant the literal sky or something worse, but he knew running would not stop it that night. He tried not to sleep. He sat in a corner of a filthy motel room, holding a knife, as if that could protect him from something that could appear. Anywhere but exhaustion finally dragged him down into darkness. He dreamed of standing in a field under a black sun, as enormous shadows moved behind the clouds. Something vast and winged swept overhead, blotting out what little light remained when he woke. The mask was on his chest, and its golden veins were pulsing in time with his heartbeat. You will tell them the sky will open, the ground will drink their voices. The command slid into his mind like a hook, and he knew that whether he wanted it or not, the second whisper was coming, and when it came, there would be no taking it back. Evan traveled for days without any clear direction, following back roads, sleeping in abandoned buildings, avoiding anyone who might recognize his face, but the whispers stayed with him, never louder, never softer, just steady, like the ticking of some unseen clock, counting down to an event only the mask understood in a rain-soaked library in a forgotten mountain town. He found a book so old its pages felt like dry leaves. The cover was blank, but inside were sketches of the black crystal mask. Drawn over and over across centuries in different hands under the images were short entries in dozens of languages. Most he could not read, but a few in English were simple enough to freeze the blood in his veins. The bearer spoke, and the seas turned. To ice the bearer spoke, and the sun did not rise. The bearer spoke, and the plague walked the earth. Each line was followed by a year, but none matched human history as he knew it. The dates were impossibly old, stretching back far beyond the first. Cities, the final page was the worst. The bearer spoke, and the sky opened, and they returned. Evans stared at the drawings until the room seemed to tilt around him, because one of them showed the exact moment he had kissed the mask in the cave, every detail perfect, right down to the cut on his hand. From the stone floor, the mask was there on the table now, though he had left it miles away in a locked chest, its golden veins flaring with light. You have read what the others have done. The voice said you will do more. Evan clenched his fists and swore he would never speak another word for it. But the mask's reply was a slow, cold certainty. You will. You already have. The whisper crawled through his skull until it formed a single image in his mind, a circle of light opening in the night sky, the edges of it burning the center dark, a portal, the voice explained. And they will step through, the creators, not saviors, not gods, the ones who made you to serve and who will reclaim what is theirs. The weight of those words pressed into him until he could barely breathe, and for the first time he realized the choice was not between speaking or not speaking. The choice was between delaying them and bringing them sooner if you do not. Speak, the voice said. Billions will live longer, but your life will be erased from all time. The mask's tone was not angry, not threatening. It was simply stating a fact as if it were reading the lines of history that had already been written. Evans' hands shook because part of him wanted to believe it was lying. But every prediction so far had come true. Every vision had matched reality. He imagined what it meant to be erased, not just dead, but gone as if he had never been born. No memories, no traces, nothing. The mask moved closer without moving at all, its voice now inside every part of him, the final whisper. Will be soon you will speak it, and they will come. And though Evan Rain hammered against the glass as Evan sat in the dark control room of a hijacked broadcast station, the mask resting on the desk before him, its golden veins blazing so bright they lit the walls like lightning. Outside, sirens wailed in the city, but the sound felt far away, muffled by the heavy hum in his skull. The voice had been speaking without pause for hours, repeating the same strange sentence over and over until he could no longer tell where his own thoughts ended and its words began. You will open the way. You will speak them through Evan's hands. Trembled over the controls. He told himself he could still walk away. He could smash the equipment, run, vanish, but deep down, he knew it was too late. He was already a vessel, and the words were already forming in his throat when the red light above, the camera blinked on the world, was watching. He tried to hold his mouth shut, but his jaw unlocked on its own, and the whisper poured out a string of sounds that were not any human language, yet carried meaning into the minds of every person who heard them. Some wept, some screamed, some stood frozen in silence, knowing something vast and ancient had just spoken to them through him. The broadcast cut to static, but the words hung in the air like the echo of a storm. The ground shook violently. Lights across the city went out. The sky above turned from gray to black in a heartbeat, and a sound like tearing metal rolled across the horizon. For 3 days, darkness swallowed the world. The sun did not rise. The stars did not shine. Only the constant low hum remained thrumming through every street, every home, every dream on the 4th day. The hum deepened into a roar, and Evan stepped outside into the wet, silent streets, tilting his head upward. Something was blotting out the black sky, an outline so huge it stretched from one horizon to the other, moving with the slow certainty of a predator wings or limbs or something far stranger shifted above the clouds. But no wind touched his face. The mask appeared in his hands, though he had not lifted it, and its voice was calm, now almost satisfied. "You have served well. Now watch." Evan felt the truth sink in, cold and heavy. He was not the hero who could stop this. He had been the doorway, the world's final announcement as the shadow descended, and the air grew thick with a heat that did not come from the sun. He understood the meaning of the mask's first words. "I have waited for your breath." It had not been waiting for him to speak to mankind. It had been waiting for him to speak to them, and now they were here, wanted to scream? No. Some deep-buried part of him whispered back, "Yes,